電機と天才トリップ・ホーキンスが世に送り出したマルチプレイヤーだ。
It's a new experience.
それは全く新しい体験。
Hey everybody, welcome back to Video So today we're going to continue the series. The 3DO doesn't suck and I'm here to convince you why, and if you can't tell already, we're talking about Road Rash today. When I did my episode on the Need for Speed, I said it was the best racing game on the 3DO on 4 wheels, and this is going to be the best racing game on 3DO on 2 wheels. Before you get too far involved though, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like and subscribe, and ring that notification bell, definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, we got a Patreon link down below as well. Now, Road Rash has got two things going for it. One is it an absolutely spectacular motorcycle racing game with combat elements, and two, this was released in July 1994. It would be another 8 months until you got Road Rash 3 on the Sega Genesis. It was a full 2D sprite-based game. It was still a really fun game, but this was doing full 3D in a time and era in which the entire series was 2D, and it did it even better than any other game in the franchise. Now I am running this at native clock speed, so the frame rate you're seeing right now was the frame rate you would be getting if you put this disc in your 3DO, and I'm using emulation for this series to try to convince people that don't own a 3DO to give it a shot. I've got plenty of 3DO hardware I could have captured from it, but I wanted to talk about this more from a you should check it out standpoint. But right off the top, as we zip through this city with all of these buildings flying past us, all of this traffic, and 30 different racers that we need to beat and pummel into submission to get the checkered flag, this game is just straight up fun. It's intense. If you make a mistake, it's going to cost you, but if you get a clean racing line, the level of intenseness and just overall adrenaline rush you're going to get when you're playing this game is second to none in my opinion on the console. Even at a frame rate that's in the teens, the sensation of speed is still 100% here, and it's just down to the fact that it's almost like a fisheye effect as you're going through these buildings, how they warp at the far edges of the screen. It makes everything feel like you're going through a tunnel, and it really sells the illusion of hauling ass fast through a city on a very fast motorcycle. And this game has a ton of progression as well. You complete races, you collect money, you get new bikes. It isn't just a couple levels you race through and then put the game away. You can spend 10, 20, 30 hours with this game and have an absolute blast doing it as you progress through the ranks and get into faster races. But of course it is a game from the mid-90s and you get hilarious cutscenes as well. We have won this race and we get a trophy filled with what looks like dollar bills. The purse for this race was not worth anything, so she just decides to take this man as her prize herself. It's hilarious, it's pure 90s, it's cheesy now, but back then this is what games were, and I do have a lot of nostalgia for them like that. And you absolutely get these insane drawings as well, this 2D art with these super deformed faces. I do not know where anyone got the idea from that from, but it does really work in context of the game, selling the overall absurd nature of it. Whether you win a race, lose a race, or start a race, you get some amazing FMV content, and it is just hilarious to watch and also charming in its own right. But getting back to the gameplay, this 100% still holds up in my opinion. When this game came out, it got universal acclaim as far as the reviews are concerned, and is still widely considered to be the best game in the Road Rash franchise, and it was here on 3DO. And as far as the actual racing is concerned, it's just straight up intense. There's so many obstacles to deal with, as well as fights to get into amongst your fellow racers. You have oncoming traffic, you have water puddles, you have oil spills, you have all sorts of different things you need to navigate around, because if you crash on your bike, you're going to lose precious time, and you can definitely just beat your opponents into submission, but that doesn't really become that big of a deal until you get towards the front of the pack. But you'll see there, I ran into a racer that had already been run over, I got run over myself, and now I need to run back to my bike. You don't just phase back into existence, you need to go run to your vehicle and grab it. I went from 7th place down to 12th because of that. Now I need to fight my way to the front again. There are weapons in this game as well, but you need to steal them from some of the players when you're just playing the single player campaign. And I would say the one thing that I don't love about the game is that the weapons aren't as plentiful as I would like. You can get bats, you can get chains, and it becomes more fun and does more damage, but you really do need to hunt those out and punch at the right time when your opponent's swinging on you so you can grab them from them. But there's so much complexity and layers to this game, and it does have a pretty good soundtrack as well, so what I'll let you do is listen to it for about 35-45 seconds, but I'm going to come back and tell you more history about the game and why the 3DO is amazing. The soundtrack definitely will not win any awards, and this game commits the cardinal sin that so many other games in the 90s committed, including Sega with pretty much every racing game, where the sound effects are louder than the music, and it can be relatively hard to hear them even if you adjust them in the options menu. But you can't strike Road Rash for that. The engine noise reigned supreme in the 90s, and it was supposed to be louder than anything else in the game. But as we get further into this course here, I just love the diversity in all of the courses, all of the different branching paths you can take, all the different things you can see. It all leads to a first place finish and another absolutely hilarious cutscene. It is just so much fun. You can tell the developers really enjoyed making this game and put so much effort into it, because in this era, full motion video was huge. You obviously saw it on the Sega CD, but they brought it over to both the 3DO as well as the PlayStation 1 at the start. Full motion video wasn't something you could get. You still pop VHS tapes in your VHS player, so having video on a CD was kind of still impressive back then, and honestly those cutscenes, while 90s and cheesy, still do hold up relatively well. As you get further into the game though, the courses are definitely going to get difficult, and actually learning the racing line is a huge thing in here. You need to practice, you need to get better, or else you're going to end up crashing and seeing the game over screen and having to start all over again. Because as we run up the coast here, very similar to Need for Speed, one wrong move and you're going to fly over that guardrail to what I would assume is your death, and you're going to see that in one moment. But again, the racing, the sensation of speed, the combat, the sum of this game's parts are just a straight 10 out of 10 for me, and everyone else that reviewed this game back in 1994 thought the exact same thing. But again, like I said, one wrong mistake, I hit an oil slick there, and I just jumped my entire bike into the ocean. You do get a cutscene saying you crashed, but apparently there is a dumpster in the ocean. What I'm trying to say is sometimes the cutscenes do not have any contextual sense as to what's actually happening in the race, but you can forgive them a little bit, because how are you going to really show somebody just jumping into the ocean on camera? But as we go back into the same course and we redo it again, even the tunnels moving past, the sensation of speed and flow in this game, I just love it. And I love it from a 2023 perspective. Now imagine kid me in November of 1994 getting this for my birthday and putting it in my 3DO. The only other Road Rash I had ever played was on the Sega Genesis, and when I saw this in motion, I was absolutely blown away. And that's why the 3DO's reputation that it gets online is just not fair. People like to make fun of it, they probably never played it, and they certainly probably weren't alive when it was actually out. Now there's definitely some dogs in the 3DO library, but Road Rash is not one of them, and I still to this day find this game incredibly fun and the best game in the Road Rash franchise. There's so much versatility and variety in the tracks, there's so many different bikes to enjoy, there's so many different obstacles to understand, and there's just so much to learn about it. Once you start learning the courses, you get better at them, and you get a faster bike, and you need to relearn them all over again, because you're just moving faster through the world. And you can get stuck behind a fence there, but if you're very careful, you can recover it. And I love that we go from this desert area to this old western looking town as well. But again, just imagine this back in July of 1994. The Sega Genesis, the Super Nintendo were still on store shelves and selling well, and then 3DO comes along with a fully 3D console that can do games like Road Rash in real time. And now you understand why someone was so excited about this back in the day. It was revolutionary, we had never seen it before, and when you actually saw it on your television at home, you felt like the future had been literally deposited into your lap and you could play it. Or in this instance, you could drive headfirst into a car and it'd probably be the last thing you ever played. But it is fun that you actually have to run back to the bike. It's something that Road Rash always did, and I kind of really appreciate it. Sure, you don't actually quote-unquote die in the game, but it does give you a risk versus reward situation in which a crash is actually going to fundamentally affect you, not just make you lose 2 to 3 seconds. And as we run further down the highway here, I love how the courses widen up like it's a highway, but then they will narrow back down later on and give you a lot more difficult turns. It is so much fun, and in a lot of ways it actually reminds me of the look and feel of Cruisin' USA and that arcadey feel. How the camera kind of has that little bit of a fisheye effect, and all of the different levels just have this kind of rural vibe to them. And I like that just like Outrun, it does have that branching path as well. You can go left or you can go right. You're not going to see a new level, but you're going to get a different way to race. It just gives a little bit more variety to a game that already has a nice amount of tracks in it. Sure, it's not going to be the most amount of tracks you've ever seen, but 6 is definitely not anything to scoff at, and neither is the performance. Sure, the frame rate is not perfect. It's not running at 30 frames a second, but with a slight clock modifier to like 1.5 the original CPU speed, you can get this game basically running at a lock 30 frames a second, and imagine how much better that would feel. But I really wanted to show you the real hardware speed experience here, to show you that sure, it's not the fastest thing in the world, but who else is doing this level of 3D back in the day? People went insane for Star Fox on Super Nintendo with a Super FX chip, and that game's a literal slideshow, and I still love it. So why does a game like Road Rash get so crapped on for having a low frame rate when other games that are as good get lauded for the same thing? And that's what I mean when I say the 3DO doesn't suck, and I'm here to convince you otherwise. But if you do lose a race, you get a hilarious cutscene. This guy's going to get hit over the head with a beer bottle and knocked out, but he's wearing a helmet, so I'm pretty sure he would be fine. All things considered, don't hit yourself in the head with a bottle when you're wearing a helmet, but I am done. I'll be back next week with more 3DO, and it's going to be amazing. But I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.